Let's talk how to add value to HMO properties. Number one on the list for myself is taking out chimney breasts. Whenever I buy a HMO property or a property I look to convert into a HMO, I always look to take out a chimney breast. So chimney breasts usually are in these Victorian homes that I buy, and they take out quite a bit of space in the room. So I always look to try and get those taken out to allow me to get more room space added to the space I'm trying to create. So for me, that's a great value add, and I always will do it regardless of what the house is, condition, doesn't really matter to me. A lot of my refurbs, if you haven't seen my projects, you can go on my YouTube channel and check out my projects, but I will always go back to brick, and that for me is an opportunity to take out a chimney breast because they are quite messy jobs, and obviously they require some structural support systems to be able to allow them to stay. They also will require some structural support if you're not taking out the chimney stack. So what I mean by chimney stack is stacks you see on top of the houses. That's what I'm referring to. If you don't take those out, then it means that you have to put some sort of support to hold that out, because now you've taken the whole entire chimney breast from the ground floor to the top floor, and so you have to now support it to allow it to not cave in into the roof and cause you more damage. One thing I also will add to that as well, normally that would mean as well speaking to neighbors regarding if you have a party wall, i.e. if you're a mid-terrace property and you're just sharing a wall with a neighbor, you might have to speak to them about the work you're doing, just in case there's damages done across their side. Obviously you want to be liable for the damages, because obviously that wouldn't have happened if you weren't taking out a chimney breast. So just bear that in mind as well, to have a party wall agreement when doing that. Just in case you don't know who I am, my name's Alfred. I have built a £4 million HMO portfolio within 3 years. The second point I would like to share with yourselves is about creating functional rooms. What do I mean by this? So a lot of times people design rooms, HMO rooms, shared houses, whatever, and don't really think about how does someone actually utilize this room. I think upon my first project, kind of working with builders and kind of creating rooms, and even looking at competitors, what they're offering in the marketplace, there was things that I noticed. So for example, light switches. So with these shared accommodations, what I realized is sometimes the rooms have these awkward layouts, which might mean that maybe your switch isn't next to your bed or close enough to your bed. So if you imagine nighttime, if you're trying to switch a light off, you have to go back to your front door to be able to turn the light off and then walk back in your dark room to get back to your bed. And for me, functionally, that doesn't make sense. In my house, I have a switch right next to my bedside. I can just turn the light off from my bedside. So again, something I incorporated within my designs of my HMO rooms. I also didn't like the idea of having pendant lights in one room. So some of these rooms can be large, and having a pendant light doesn't light up the room. Sometimes the room can still look dim. So again, in my house, you can see I've got spotlights. That's something I incorporated in my rooms. Again, I wanted to provide spotlights. So again, having spotlights just transforms the way the room looks in terms of how bright the room is, how well lit, how it just makes the room look, especially against white walls, it just makes the room even look exaggerated in terms of size, and how good it looks as well. So for me, that was a no-brainer. All my HMOs have spotlights. I also even had the functionality of being able to dim your lights from your bedside. Again, I could have just put a switch, a flick-on switch. Obviously, these spotlights can get very bright. So again, if I want to be able to dim my lights, I want to have that functionality by my bed and not have to get up to the front door to go and dim the lights, because usually the switches are by the door when coming in. So these are little things I add to my properties to be able to make the room more homely and also make it more functional for the person who's utilizing the space. Another thing that I kind of noticed with properties, again, in this current market, for sure, people are now working from home a lot. I have a lot of working professionals living in my properties. Wi-Fi is a big priority for a lot of people moving into these properties. So again, having Wi-Fi boosters, super key. People looked at me crazy when I was starting out putting Wi-Fi boosters in my houses and putting them across all the floors. They're like, why are you adding that in? I'm like, because I know I've lived in shared houses before, right? The biggest problem you have is when your room isn't next to the router, the Wi-Fi keeps cutting out, the signal isn't strong enough to be able to capture the Wi-Fi, and there's issues with download speeds and all that stuff. So having Wi-Fi boosters across each floor maintains the consistency across each floor of the house, and so I don't have any issues around Wi-Fi connections or anything like that. And again, I am thinking ahead what issues can arise from living in this property. So this is what I mean by functional, creating functional HMOs, functional rooms. I think from a perspective like, how is someone going to utilize this property and best live in this house, and how can this house best serve them? So lead with that, and again, you will have customers that you retain for a very long period of time because you're providing them a great service and a great home, more importantly. If you're interested in building your own BRR HMO portfolio, I have left a link in the comment section for you to be able to join my free community where I share my BRR HMO masterclasses and also my Raising Finance masterclass. Feel free to utilize that if that's of interest. So point number 3 is, I do not want any room that is sub 10 meters squared. And some might not understand what 10 meters squared is, but if you kind of start to get measurements and start looking at properties and looking at sizes of rooms, get a feel for what 10 meters squared looks like, excluding the ensuite. So if you add the ensuite, we're talking about the standard room size, which is usually a double size room ensuite, would need to be 12 meters in total. So 10 meters for livable space and 2 meters for the ensuite. Reason being is you want to have a decent space. People are having to live in these rooms. Some of them are even having to work from home. So you don't want these rooms that are like 7-8 meters squared, 6.5 meters squared, the bare minimum to pass the requirements for a single room. I just believe that those rooms aren't going to serve you long term. So there's no longevity in these type of rooms. What I mean by this is these small rooms, over time, when rents increase happens, those rooms can only fetch a certain ceiling. Like there's only so much you can charge for a certain type of room. Someone might just say, oh, well, if I'm going to pay that much, I must pay more to get a larger room and get the space I want. So that means that you might now start dragging unwanted type of tenants in your properties, even a different demographic to someone who's paying a higher rate in your house. So for example, you've got like a studio room in that property, you might now start attracting someone who's paying £500 versus someone who's paying £1,000. You don't want those two types of people in the house. You ideally want everyone in the house paying a similar rate. So generally means that they're of the same demographic of tenants. So a big lesson there is you don't want to offer these small rooms mixed up with these big rooms. And long term, you don't want to have a small room because it won't survive. When times are tough, these rooms aren't going to be desirable, especially with technology coming into play, AI. We're accessing a lot of things within our houses. We don't have to leave our house, cinemas, food shopping. You just literally live in that room, right? The more space your rooms as a HMO provides, the more longevity, more sustainable your portfolio is long term to be able to still generate rents in the future. So that's the biggest tip I can give to you when it comes to room sizes. Point number 4 is go above and beyond to add more to your room. What I mean by this is, again, when I was going into this game of building a HMO portfolio, I went to look at what my competitors were offering in their rooms. Quickly realized simple things like it would be great if we could have like a TV, like a 32-inch smart TV added to the room as part of the offer. So i.e. we just have this installed on the wall. Tenants can come and utilize that, plug in their Fire Sticks or whatever they've got into these TVs and utilize it from day one if that's what they wanted to do. And so little things like that, adding a microwave. So for example, if you see some rooms have large enough space to be able to add a tabletop. So what I mean by this is like you see like a tabletop with a sink, we'll have a microwave. I might have underneath the cabinet work, a fridge freezer. Again, a big problem in HMOs, people sharing fridges, right? And sometimes this fridge space in the communal areas aren't sufficient, or even worse, they leave their stuff within those fridges and they come back and the stuff is gone. So when someone walks into a room and says, oh, hey, I've got my own fridge freezer, they're like, that's a win because they haven't got to worry about placing food or doing food shops and coming back and their stuff being missing and trying to find out who took it. If you have HMOs, you know what I mean. Obviously, I've never experienced that because I have fridge freezers in my room. So again, eliminate this problem potentially happening to myself. So these are all the things you can do to add more value into your rooms. Sometimes I have a full-on kitchenette facility, cabinet work. So again, they can store their stuff in there. If they're going to use the kitchen, they can take the stuff from the cabinets that they've got in their rooms and take it to the kitchen. And when they're done with it, bring it back into their room. So these are all wins for people that are coming in. Simple things like even linens and stuff being added as people coming into the room. So if I have a newly refurbished HMO, when I finish staging it, usually I just leave everything behind, like the pillowcases, the quilts, everything. Literally, the bed is ready to go in and sleep night one. If you had nothing, you don't want to go figure out what to put on the bed and blah, blah. It's already there for you. So these are all little things you can do. And some might argue, oh, you're spending too much money on these things. But like, one, I'm charging premium rents for these rooms. And people are willing to pay because all these things are just easily available, readily available in these rooms. And they love that's being provided to them compared to other offers, other landlords what they're offering in the marketplace. I just seem like a better offer, and they're willing to pay even extra for these facilities because they just know the headache that comes with sharing houses. So when these facilities are available within their room, it's just a win. Number 5, to add value to your HMO properties, do not cut spend on your build. Again, people are trying to save these thousands of pounds, pennies, in my opinion, even like trying to cut corners, like not even trying to do a full rewire, doing partial rewires, all these things, like not going back to brick. I obviously look to buy a property and retain them for years to come, right? For me, this is like a very, very long play, 15, 20 years play. So if I buy an old Victorian home and I want to cut corners because I don't want to spend too much money because the refurb costs are quite high, unfortunately, it is what it is. It's part of the business model, run the numbers, make sure it makes sense. But if I'm trying to cut corners because I'm trying to save on my electrics and I'm trying to save on my plumbing and trying to partially make changes wherever it's like mandatory and not kind of change on things that potentially could break in the near future, you're just going to have a higher maintenance bill in the future. Again, one thing HMOs are known for is the high maintenance and kind of churn of things, people living, coming in and out. So you want to make sure that this is maintenance free as much as possible. And for me, to allow that to happen, so usually there is no maintenance issues occurring straight away. I know over the years to come, there will become that, but like if I didn't do that change there and there on day one, likelihood is in the near future, not even near future, in a month, 2 months time, I will begin call out charges to fix issues regarding the property. And for me, I'm not trying to have that. I'd rather spend the money, have a brand new property and have a level of warranty as well, because the builders have just installed it. There's no reason why even within the first 12 months there should be any issues with the stuff installed. So for me, the money's worth the headache of having call out charges happening at the early stage of you owning that property. The last point I will add is have cleaners go to your properties every 2 weeks. HMOs, if you're having 6 people, if you imagine having sharing a communal area, you want your cleaners going in there. They can be your eyes as well to kind of see how the house has been maintained. I believe in creating a culture in these houses, right? And for me, that culture is having a clean property. If the house is seen to be taken care of, i.e. cleaners are going every 2 weeks, cleaning the whole entire place, taking the bins out, making the house look spotless and clean, tenants will treat the house in which they see it. If the house is a mess all the time, guess what? Very quickly it will become a dump. And you have rats in there, which causes even a bigger problem. Trust me, you don't have pest control coming in trying to get rid of rats. That's a bill in itself. So it doesn't cost much. I think it's like £60 a month, maybe if that, to have cleaners going for 2-3 hours to clean all the communal areas. It's a no-brainer. Like, you want to maintain that culture of having a clean HMO. And again, if you know how HMOs work, you want to have people going in there, making sure that things are being maintained. So long term, you have a sustainable portfolio, i.e. you don't have issues having damaged properties, your house being trashed because people are dirty in general or not looking after it well enough. So just for me, spend the money. I guess the theme of quite a lot of this around what I've just said is spending extra money. If you want to have a sustainable portfolio, you've got to spend the money, because in the long run, you will make that money back through the income you're making from the property and not having to deal with maintenance issues or damages that are happening to your property because you don't have these things in place. So these are my tips I want to share with you guys. Obviously, if you're interested in getting to BRI HMO and wanting to do this, I've left a link in the description for you to be able to reach out to my team or myself to see how we can help you get started on something like this for yourself.